2024 shapes up to be a real interesting year and scenario for the Missouri Tigers. Number one, they play in a great conference, highly competitive SEC. They've got one of the best receiving crews in the country. They have one of the best offensive line groups in the country. And they've also got a QB who's pretty nice and has been touted as one of the best signal callers in college football for 2024. This is QB Unfiltered, my take. Missouri quarterback Brady Cook.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Brady Cook, 6'2", 205 pounds. He's a senior to be out of St. Louis, Missouri. Cook prepped at Chaminade High School, and as a senior, he was rated the number one quarterback in the state of Missouri. And he also came out of high school as a 3-star rated quarterback. And man, if I had a nickel for every 3-star QB in high school that turned out to be a damn good college quarterback, I'd be a rich dude. And Brady Cook is somewhat of a rarity in college football today. He's one of the few 2024 starting quarterbacks who's not a transfer portal guy. So from the get-go, he was a Missouri Tiger. Okay, brief history on Cook. In 2020, freshman year, true freshman year, he redshirted for Mizzou. And then 2021 was kind of an interesting season for him. That was his redshirt freshman year. He played in 5 games that season, but his first start was their bowl game, believe it or not. And he was subbing for their injured starter. That was the Armed Forces Bowl, a game in which they lost to Army. And then we go to 2022, where Cook became the full-time starter. He led them to the Gasparilla Bowl, where again they lost, and this time to Wake Forest, which set the stage for this past season, 2023. Obviously, started the entire season, led the Tigers to a win against Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. And this past season, he threw for 3,317 yards, 21 tugs. He completed 66% of his passes, ran for 319 yards and 6 touchdowns. So in Cook's career so far at Mizzou, he's thrown for 6,473 yards, 38 touchdowns. He's been pretty consistent with his completion percentage. So for his career, he's right at 66.6%. And along with those 38 touchdowns, he's thrown 13 picks. He's ran for just about 1,000 yards and 15 touchdowns. Going back to the intro today, there are some interesting storylines that we need to discuss with Mizzou and Brady Cook. They're picked in the top 20 by the gurus at the Associated Press. They're slotted in at number 11 preseason poll. And Cook is ranked as one of the top quarterbacks in college football this year. Cook's got some great weapons to throw to. The receiver crew is ranked as one of the best in the country. And the guys up front are also, as a group, picked to be one of the best offensive lines in the nation. But with all of those positives, you got to talk about the reality that the Mizzou Tigers play in the SEC, which is, most people think, is the most competitive, best conference in college football. That's up for debate. I just know for, my point of view, those dudes in that conference can play, and there are no off weeks. There are no soft teams in that conference. It's murderer's row when you start playing conference games. And then offensive coordinator Kirby Moore is really somewhat of an unknown. He starts only his second season as offensive coordinator. So last year was his first go around running an offense at the college level. And he's primarily been a receiver coach. He coached wideouts at Fresno State for 6 seasons. He knocked around early in his career at the University of Washington. But this is only the second year that he's coordinated an offense. And that's got to be something that is going to I think, tilt the scales either good or bad for Brady Cook this year and for the Mizzou Tigers. We'll wait and see how he does. You know, they do some really interesting stuff, particularly when they have called quarterback runs, like down in the red zone. They do some really cool stuff offensively and scheme-wise. The passing game is got really good schemes. I've got some question marks on some of their pass protection schemes, and we'll talk about that here as we go. Okay, so with all that said, let's jump into Brady Cook's game, and this is what I like about him. Number one, he plays with a lot of confidence and a lot of poise, and he plays loose. There are a number of quarterbacks that play in college football that are really good when things are perfect, when it's a perfect pocket environment, when they can throw in rhythm and tempo. They don't have people in their face. Things aren't breaking down around them. They can execute, throw, and really be an effective quarterback. But a lot of those guys, when you knock them off their platform or when you put them into an environment where stuff is breaking down, their game breaks down as well. Brady Cook really plays loose and has a whole lot of poise in the pocket, and he's really fun to watch when he gets on the perimeter, when he pulls the ball down and runs. He can really improvise out there, and it's like he's thinking one or two steps ahead, and there's not a lot of not every quarterback can do that. Okay, one of my favorite plays from him that I've seen on film is he's forced to roll to the right, and he's got a receiver on the right who's running a curl route, and he's got a running back who's running a swing. So he's outside of Cook, running a swing route to the same side that he's rolling. And as Cook's rolling, he points at the curl route. And he does that to get the defenders to sink back on the curl. All right. So he's rolling, he's looking at the curl, he points at the curl, and then he drops down and sidearms the swing route to the running back, who now has grass to catch and run. And those are things that you really can't coach in a quarterback, but that's an example of what I'm talking about, where he can improvise, he can play loose. You know, you see him on these runs where he's penned in on the sideline and he gives the defender the dead leg, where it looks like he's pulling up to go out of bounds, and he kind of delays, gives him the dead leg, and then sticks his toe in the ground and cuts back inside and gets extra yardage. That's fun football, and that's creative football from the quarterback position, and Brady Cook does that. Okay, now his pocket management. I like his pocket management, but he's not consistent. So I'm going to come back and talk about the inconsistencies when I talk about what I don't like about his game. But what I do like with his pocket movement is he's got a really good feel for when to slide laterally or use the seldom used controlled shuffle. And I'll talk about that here in a second. But he's got that great ability to keep his eyes downfield, focused on his reads and keys, and just sense and feel if something's starting to break down to his right or to his left, where he just has to slide one or two steps left or one or two steps right to give him the space to stride and throw the ball the way he wants to throw it. All right. Now, the controlled shuffle, that is when you hit the end of your drop, instead of flat footing it and just staying there and going through your reads. Like if your initial read, your initial receiver is not there and you come to your second guy, you cannot stand in one spot. Why? Because your offensive line's losing ground when they pass block. And pretty soon those guys are going to be in your lap. So controlled shuffle is you hit that last step in your drop, you come off your initial read, you can't throw it in rhythm and tempo, and you start to slowly shuffle back 1, 2, 3 steps, controlled so that when you are ready to throw the ball, you can just jam that back foot in the ground and get that sucker out. But what that controlled shuffle does is it keeps that buffer between you and your offensive line. When Cook executes these techniques, he's really effective. And I've talked about this in other shows. It's very obvious when you watch him drop and go through his progressions. And when the pocket starts to break down, which invariably it's always going to do, his eyes don't come down to the rush. So he feels the rush. He slides, moves, shuffles, however he needs to do it to put him in position to throw the ball the way he wants to do it. Quarterbacks whose eyes come down to the rush, the passing game's over. Okay. They just broke that connection, that visual connection with them and their receivers and the routes. And now it becomes, what can I do to get out of this situation that I'm in? And it becomes a deal where most quarterbacks then put the ball, under their arm and they're forced to run it. Okay, one other thing that I like about Cook is he will stand in there and deliver the football when he knows he's going to get lit up. And there are a number of instances this past season with Mizzou and their offensive line where you've got either a D lineman or a linebacker who is coming right at him. And I've talked about other quarterbacks doing this in other shows. It's a skill that your guy has to have, okay? He's got to be able to stand in there, deliver the ball, and then try to protect himself as best he can, knowing he's going to get popped. And Cook does a hell of a job of doing this. There are a lot of plays throughout the course of last season where he was getting smacked as he was releasing the ball from the front and was able to get that thing out there and let his receivers make a play on the ball. Okay, Cook throws a really accurate back shoulder fade. Guys, this is one of the hardest throws for a quarterback to make. Corner route, dig route. I think the bubble screen is hard for QBs, but the back shoulder fade, that's a skill that not every quarterback in college football has. And Cook does a good job of putting that ball right where it needs to go. When you're throwing back shoulder fades, you've got a really tiny area to put that football. If you miss a middle of the receiver to inside, that ball's knocked down, or if you miss too far inside, it's picked. And so you're throwing to half of a receiver, and you really have to put it on that, that outside shoulder or that small area to the outside where the guy can go up and high point it, whatever. Cook's accurate in delivering back shoulder fades. He throws a really nice deep ball. And if you've listened to other shows that I've done, you know that on the deep ball, you got to put air underneath it. Okay. Put air underneath the throw and let your receiver go get it. Give him a chance to catch up to a throw that may be overthrown. As soon as you throw a flat deep ball, you throw it flatter as a quarterback. If you overthrow your receiver, play's over. He can't catch up to it. It's incomplete pass. So Cook does a nice job of putting air underneath his deep throws. Okay, and then when he pulls the ball down and runs, or when he runs on design QB runs, he's got some pretty good quicks, and he's got a nice little burst. He's able to run away from defenders. He's able to squirt through, guys that may have angles on him coming from the sides. He's got some quicks when he runs the ball. He's pretty good athletically out there in the open field. Okay, that's what I like about Brady Cook. Now, this is what I don't like about his game. On a lot of his throws, and I'm not talking about when he has people in his lap, but on a lot of his throws, he keeps his weight back when he delivers. In other words, it's pretty obvious to see that he will stride, but there's not a lot of weight on that front foot. He's keeping that weight back when he throws. Now, This does not affect his accuracy, but what it does when he keeps his weight back, it causes him to throw a soft ball. You can't get zip on your throw. You can't get juice on that throw if you keep your weight back when you throw it. You just can't do it. You've got to be able to drive dig routes. You've got to be able to drive the ball on deep crossers. And a lot of times when he throws these balls, they're coming in soft. Now, you're probably saying, well, why do you have a problem with that, coach? Well, the problem is, yeah, he may be completing these balls, but because he's throwing them soft, the defenders have a chance to catch up, and it's catch the ball and tackle. And sometimes you'll see the receivers break tackles and run. But when the quarterback's able to put some zip on those throws to where he's hitting the receiver when he's open and running away from defenders or in a big patch of grass, that guy's able to catch the ball right now, tuck it, flip that leg over, stick his toe on the ground, and go north and south and run for yards. Yards after catch are so important offensively in the passing game. Okay, and then with the pocket management, we said that there were some inconsistencies on this, and this is what we're talking about here. There are times where things are breaking down in the pocket, and instead of sliding laterally or doing the controlled shuffle, he just flat foots it. He flat foots it, and pretty soon he's got one of his offensive linemen that's in his lap, or he's got a defensive lineman now that's in his face, which causes him to throw the ball fading away and throwing it off his back foot. And again, when he does that, he throws a really soft ball. And I'm watching him going, Brady, all you need to do is slide or shuffle, and you can throw it the way you want to throw it. So he at times flat foots it. And you can't do that as a quarterback. You cannot flat foot it, because invariably you're going to soon have offensive linemen that are in your face. Those guys are losing ground when they pass block. And if you've got guys that are vertically setting on pass protection, which Missouri, their offensive linemen, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But if you've got guys that are getting depth off the ball for pass protection, and as a quarterback, you take a 3-step drop and you stand there, and your first read's not there, or it's a slower developing play. Let's say you're throwing the deep crosser. Your center, your guards, your tackle, they're going to be in your grill, and that's going to affect your throw. Okay, now let's go into a little bit of X's and O's stuff with Mizzou's offense. Let's start with number one, this play here where Missouri's pass protection. Now, it doesn't matter what level you're playing, what scheme you're running. In your pass protection, you don't ever want to be in a situation where you've got, let's say in Missouri's case, 6 guys that are in protection, 5 offensive linemen in the back. And defensively, they bring a 5-man rush or a 6-man rush, or there's times where it was a 4-man rush. And you've got 6 guys to block, and you block 5 guys, or you block 4 guys, or you block 3 guys with 6 guys, and 1 defender's coming unblocked. That can't happen. And so here's the situation here, and I got to think that this is scheme and not a mental bust. And a lot of times when you're watching protection on film or on TV, sometimes it's tricky to determine whether that is actual scheme that got him in trouble, or it was an offensive lineman with a mental bust, or a running back with a mental bust and just didn't do their job right. But in this play here, defensively, they're lined up in sort of a goofy looking bear front, which You've got both tackles covered, both guards covered in 3 techniques. And then instead of the nose guard being head up on the center, he's over in the gap, or he's on the shade, or he's on the 1 technique on the guard. And then you've got that 1 linebacker in the box. Now, the running backs lined up on the left side here. What Missouri is trying to do, and what they should have done, is use what I used to call bob and sort. That's the way we protected it. Bob and sort means bob is big on big, or man. You're manning one side, and that's usually the side that the running back's lined up on. And then the sort side is away from the back, and that is a gap protection or zone blocking. And depending on the front, you could have a 3-man sort, a 2-man sort, or a 4-man sort. In this situation here, they're sorting right. And the way that defensively they're lined up, this should be a 3-man sort. So the tackle, right guard, and center should be zoning or sorting to the right, which puts the left guard and the left tackle man to man on those 2 guys, and the running back should have this inside linebacker. Well, what Missouri does is they run a 4-man sort. And so they've got 4 guys for 3 guys, which means they're doubling a defensive lineman, and their running back now has 2 guys to block. Now, does that make sense? One of those guys is a defensive lineman, and then you've got the linebacker coming right behind him. So it's like one guy's going B gap, the other guy's going A gap, and the running back's going, holy shit. And Brady Cook's probably going, holy shit. So that doesn't make sense to me. Okay, on this same play now, let's talk about receivers. And Missouri's running a great scheme here. This is an old Steve Spurrier move when he was running the fun and gun for the Gators in the 90s, early 90s. And he would get teams that would play man-to-man against him, and he'd run these isolation routes where he would basically just run, some bullshit. I called them absorb routes, where they're absorbing defenders. And then he's playing one-on-one with 1 receiver against 1 DB. And because he's absorbing the other defenders, he's getting them out of the way of that receiver's route, but he's also getting them out of the way of the quarterback's vision. And it's basically just one-on-one. So what Missouri's doing here against man coverage, they're running the outside receiver to the right on a hitch route, and the number 2 receiver to the right's running the little under route, and number 3 is running the slot fade. Now, why is this such a great play? Because cover-wise, ability-wise, the worst cover guys are going to be lined up over the number 3 receiver in trips. So you're forcing that guy to play one-on-one with your slot receiver, okay? Now, I want you to look at the speed, intensity, and effort of the hitch route by the outside receiver and what that does to the cornerback. So this guy comes off the ball on the snap and he half-asses his route. The cornerback's smart now. He's thinking to himself, bullshit, that guy's not running a route, and look what he does. He forgets about the hitch. He should have been sucking up on the hitch route if the guy would have gone full speed. And he turns and tries to bail underneath that seam vertical, and he almost gets there. Cook throws a great ball for a touchdown. But this is an example here where, that's a lazy route by a receiver that almost cost them a touchdown throw. And I wanted to put this one in just because I couldn't believe I was seeing an SEC defense do this. Watch Kentucky's DBs. I mean, if you're Cook and you're a quarterback, this is what you love to throw verticals against, how these guys are playing the verts down here. Look at both cornerbacks, especially the cornerback to Mizzou's left. I don't know what this guy's doing, if he was guessing, if he got mesmerized looking at Cook's jersey number. I don't know. But that outside vertical runs right by him. And then look at the middle vertical down here from the right, blows right by that safety who looks like a deer in headlights. And kind of unbelievable that that's an SEC defensive coverage right there, but that's what they got. And you got to take advantage of that when you're a quarterback, and Cook does exactly that. Okay, so Brady Cook now is a year older going into his senior season, and he's a year wiser. He's more battle-tested, and he has been battle-tested, SEC. He's got a lot of good people surrounding him, receivers, offensive linemen. This should be real fun to watch this year. I'm expecting a pretty big year from Cook. I think one of the storylines that you really need to watch for the Mizzou fans out there is how Moore does as the offensive coordinator. But as I said, it should be an exciting season for Brady Cook and the Mizzou Tigers. Okay, so if you enjoyed today's show on Brady Cook and you like my take on playing the hardest position that there is to play in sports, and that's the quarterback position, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate all of you that have done that. And let me know in the comments what you think of Brady Cook, what you are looking forward to, or what you see and project for the Mizzou Tigers in 2024. All right, this is QB Unfiltered. And remember, always throw the ball short to guys who can score. See ya.
I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.